Well, apparently some of you enjoyed sitting with your families like we requested this morning, and then tonight you're doing it again, most of you. That's what's good. Of course, some of you do it all the time. That's fine too. We're going to finish up tonight. Today, this is fourth Sunday, Family Sunday. Now, we learned this morning that the first characteristic of a Christian home is to be Christ-like. And we're going to get a different characteristic each month this year on fourth Sunday, Family Sunday. And then at night, we're going to be very practical. I'm going to think about what can we as families do to incorporate what we learn in the morning. This morning, Christ-likeness. So tonight, how do we incorporate Christ-likeness into our families? There's an interesting verse in Ecclesiastes chapter 12, verse 12. And it says, of the making of many books, it is wearisome to the flesh. No end to the making of books, and wearisome to the flesh. Thought about that verse before, trying to figure out what in the world is he saying. I don't know it all that he's saying, but I think there's part of it's this. Here's what I think is going on. He just finished a book, writing to his son and to others about how he had messed up in life and was trying to give some really good advice. And I think he might be saying this. There are many books on these topics. There will always be books, things to read, things to hear about. You can read and study till you are worn out. But if all you do is read and study until you put it to practice, you've really not done enough. You ever met somebody that has a whole lot of book sense, but not a lot of what we call walking around sense? There are people like that. They just don't get it when it comes to life in general. Oh, they get it from a page. They understand the academics, but they don't get how to live it every day. Well, in these night sessions, we're going to talk about how to live it every day. So here is the question to ask. What does Christ-like look like? Well, you look at a mirror and you have two options. You have the person that you see. We all see that. But then there is the question of, hit the button please. Or do you see Jesus? Jesus is in the mirror. I need to see myself, but I also need to see Jesus reflected in my life. That's what it means to be Christ-like. So in theory, I should be able to look in a mirror and see myself, but I see Christ in me. More importantly, everybody else ought to be able to see that. That is being Christ-like. Well, if I'm going to be like Christ, I don't know of a better way to start it than Luke 2, verse 52. Before we look at that verse for a minute, I'd like to see a show of hands. How many people right now, if I ask you to do so, could leave this room and go to Loft 52? 252. Loft 252. How many could get there? Raise your hands. Come on, raise them up high. You know where Loft 252 is? Let me tell you about Loft 252. It's right behind that wall right up there. If you haven't been there, you need to go see Loft 252. It's behind that wall on the second floor. I'm not going to tell you any more about it. Some of you are going, I don't want. There will be a mad rush up the stairs when we're finished. It's perfectly fine. I want to encourage you to go to Loft 252. But for us, we're going to go to Luke 252. And Jesus increased in wisdom, in stature, and in favor with God and men. A Christian home is Christ-like, meaning the members of that home should reflect Christ and everybody see Christ living in them. Well, if I'm going to be Christ-like, it takes training. Doesn't come naturally. Everything we do in life takes some kind of training. Every single thing takes some kind of training, some greater, some lesser. Training is necessary. Why not then follow the training that Jesus received to teach us how to be and trained to be Christ-like? And in a very practical way tonight, here's what I'm going to ask you to do as families. As we walk down through these concepts, you will notice some suggestions. I want us to think about them. I want you to add to them. And as we look at these different suggestions each month, I'd like for us as families to look at those things, choose 1, 2, or 14 of them over the next month and put them into practice, getting ready for the next characteristic of a Christian home. So here's the idea. From the 4th Sunday in January until the 4th Sunday in February, as families, Christian families, look at this list of things, add to it if you will, but make a conscious decision that we're going to pull from this list some things that we're going to put into practice over the next 4 weeks to try and experience Christ-like living. Briefly then, we will consider them together. Jesus increased in wisdom. One who is Christ-like will look like Jesus did mentally. Mentally means that you will come to know Jesus. Paul's words about Timothy in 2 Timothy 1, how he was raised by his mother and his grandmother, and how they had instilled faith in him. That's what I'm talking about. Think about this. Jesus came from heaven to earth, lived as a baby, as a toddler, as a child, and his parents had the responsibility of teaching him about God. Now that's a powerful thing. Wait a minute, didn't Jesus already know about God? I mean, when he was here, he's 3 years old. Didn't he already know God? Or when he's 7 years old on the playground, don't you think he already knew about God? I think he learned here what we learn here. He learned about God. What do you think would have happened if his parents had not decided to teach him about God? Could he have become the Savior of the world without knowing God? If they had such an awesome responsibility for the child that God sent to them, do we have any less responsibility within our families than to teach God? Mentally, to know Jesus? Here are a few things that I thought of. Family devotionals, obviously. But maybe there are some things that we hadn't thought about. Like, for instance, how many times are you riding in the car with your family? And you have a choice between Dad's talk radio, Mom's music, the children's iPad, iPhone, iMusic, whatever it is, in their ears, and everybody on a different page. Or take time to do Bible verse drilling. Take time to sing songs. We've done that years ago when our children were young. We'd sing songs in the car. Maybe you challenge questions back and forth. Take opportunities of those times to teach. What about Bible classes? We're talking to, they say, preaching to the choir. I know you're bringing your children to Bible class, but others need to learn, and you need to encourage them. What about encouraging our families to come to Bible class? Children will come to Bible class led by parents who come to Bible class. If you have the ability to get out of bed in the morning on a Sunday, you have the ability to sit in a Bible class and get some more training. That's a good thing. Be involved in all kinds of Bible classes. How about create an environment in your home where your children feel like they can ask you any question they want? Any question they want to ask about being the person they need to be. You ever get scared of stuff like that? Are you ever frightened that they're going to ask you something you don't know? Maybe that's why we don't create that environment. Make it free to them to be able to say, I have a question. What a great way to train people, children, and each other to know God. How about encouraging them, each of us, to teach others about God? I try to keep material out in the lobby to hand out. I would like to see that turned over consistently and me have to restock it all the time. What an easy and simple way to have some stuff to give to your children, and they can just take it to their friends. And each of us, adults, we give them a good example by us doing it. There are all kinds of things that we can do to teach knowledge of God through the Word. And by doing so, in our families, we will look like Jesus mentally. How about we look like Jesus physically? Well, that picture, you just find something like that. In fact, I'm convinced that's not what he looked like. Absolutely. Beyond shadow of doubt, I'm not going to explain it. You'll come to me later and you'll say, prove it. Jesus did not have that kind of long hair. Period. That's where I'm going. I'm stopping right there. But he didn't look like that. So what does it mean? He increased in stature. Well, I do think he grew up, sure. But here's what I'm thinking about physically. You think his parents taught him to have morals? You think they taught him to know what's right and what's wrong? Are you clear? Are we clear in our homes about our standards of morality? This is right and this is wrong. Someone came to me this morning and had a great thought. I'm going to pass it along to you. Great thought. This person said, I was raised by parents who were constantly saying, is it right or is it wrong? They were not saying, is it legal or is it illegal? Now you think about that a minute. That's the way to raise children. That's the way to think as a family. Is it right or is it wrong? Now certainly legal and illegal enters into it. But what if it is right but illegal? You do what's right. even if the government says you can't. You do it anyway. So if we train our children and we talk about in our families what's right and what's wrong, legally and illegally, will take care of itself. Morals. You think discipline? You think Jesus was disciplined as a child? Do you ever think that his parents had to say, no, don't do that? Hard to think about that, isn't it? And yet Hebrews 5, verse 8 says he learned obedience by the things that he suffered. Do you discipline? How about giving responsibilities? Training each other in our families to have responsibilities. Everybody in a home has to have responsibility. How do you operate a home without everybody having a part to pitch in? Children need to be trained. They have their responsibilities. Wives, train their husbands. Here are your responsibilities. I don't think husbands train wives to do that. But we all have them, right? So a Christian home, when we train them physically, they look like Jesus, who increased in stature by what he was trained to be. Number 3, he grew in favor with God. You see, we've seen him mentally and physically and now spiritually. Spiritually. Spiritually, to be a person that does and acts like God would act or want them to act. Spiritually speaking, thinking of things on a higher level. For instance, what about emphasizing the priority of spiritual things? Emphasizing the priority of spiritual things and compartmentalizing physical things. We're proud of our children when they accomplish things. For instance, if your child gets on the, whatever they call it now, the teams that compete with knowledge teams, what are those things? The math forums, what are they called? Say it louder. Academic team. There you go. See, I wasn't on one, so I don't know the word. Okay? Your child gets on an academic team, and they know all these things, and they ask questions, and they win a ribbon, and you go, yes, my child is smart. Nothing wrong with that. But do we emphasize ever? How many Bible verses do you know? How many stories in the Bible have you taught them? Does it thrill your heart when you can begin a Bible story and they can finish it? Shouldn't that make you just as proud or more proud than how many math questions they can ask? You see, we emphasize the spiritual, we compartmentalize the physical, put it in its proper place. I'm not saying de-emphasize, I'm just saying put it where it needs to be with respect to the spiritual. What about giving? What about giving? Well, here's a real basic thing that to me is true. If you give your child an allowance, however how you do so, the goodness of your heart, they have traits, they have things they have to do, whatever, however, should we teach them? Now here, you take a bit of that and you set it aside for God. Shouldn't we do that? I think we should. I've had college students ask me before, because we all know you're the poorest people on the planet. We understand that. And some will be very, very sincere. What do I do about giving? And I ask them this question. I say, have you bought 4 Cokes this week? Well, yeah. Well, the next time, buy 3 and give the other one to God. It's not about how much. It's about the idea of giving that creates spirituality. So see, don't be thinking about grand stuff. Think about the little stuff. Practice it. Put it into practice. Do what you can do to learn to be spiritual people. And when we do, we'll look like Jesus did spiritually. And finally, number 4, he grew in favor with men. We see him mentally, physically, spiritually, and socially. What do? Encourage in our families. Make it something that we reach out to other people. We reach out to them and encourage them. Come be a part of this activity with us. Come and be a part of these things so that we can all sit together and learn. I'll make a plug for, is it a week from Tuesday night, Eddie? On the 4th. Oh, February 4th. February 4th. That's a Tuesday, isn't it? Yeah. February 4th, a week from this Tuesday. At this building, you can come and be a part of a debate. You ever heard of Bill Nye the Science Guy? He's going to be debating Ken Ham, who was the man who started Answers in Genesis and built the Creation Museum. It's going to be creation versus evolution. The tickets were made available to come to that at the Creation Museum, sold out in 20 minutes. Can't get in. But they're going to broadcast live. And our resident tech people have it live right here. Why not plan to get families together and come right here and watch that debate? Maybe come early, sit around and eat together, talk about what might be coming up, what am I looking for, and then sit right here and enjoy the debate and talk about it. Now, I'd love to be here, but I'll be at the Freed Hardeman Lectures. But I'm going to try to figure out a way to watch it online down there. Skip out of a lecture, go watch the debate. But what a great activity. Families can come. Bring your other friends and families with you and create this environment where we are reaching out socially. And you do it in a way, as the Bible says of Jesus, he grew in favor with men. Everything he did, the people were impressed. That's why I used Acts 10. Did you notice the little phrase that Lucas read? Here it is about Jesus. It sums up his life. Acts 10, about verse 38. It said this: he went about doing good. If our Christian homes will be Christ-like by going out and doing good and creating this environment of looking like Jesus, not only what will it do for our families, what will it do for our church, what will it do for our community? A Christian home is Christ-like. Let's all pick some of these things and put them into practice over the next 4 weeks. If you did the word search, I said the magic phrase that goes at the bottom of the page. Hope you found it. On the bulletin board in the lobby that says family ministry, the solution to the puzzle is there. You can go check your answers and see how many got the magic phrase, the secret phrase. We might do some more things with that over the year, turn it into something even bigger and better. But I hope this emphasis on family today has been valuable to you. Tonight is the family of God. If you are ready to obey your Lord and Savior, put Him on in baptism, or get right with Him and have us pray for you. We sing now for your encouragement. Let us stand together.